We are reading The Shore Road Mystery, Chapter 10, Strange Roadblock. Muffling Chet's yell, Frank rolled him violently over and landed quickly on top of him. The tractor and its whirling blades missed them by inches. The vehicle's sound grew fainter as Brenham continued ahead. As Frank looked up, he noticed a large truck passing slowly on the road going in the direction of Bayport. "It's okay, pal," he said, patting Chet. "But let's get to the road before Brenham starts back on this row." Chet finally freed himself from the sleeping bag. Trailing it behind him, the heavy youth followed Frank across the field, running in a low crouch. Once beneath the fence, the boys paused to catch their breath and saw Brenham turn. "I've had it," Chet moaned softly. "Let's get out of here." Shh. Puzzled by the farmer's strange activity, they watched his tractor, still without lights, churning earth at a rise near the highway. After 20 minutes, the vehicle stopped. Brenham cut the motor, jumped down, and returned to his house. In a few moments, the building was dark. "What was that all about?" Chet asked. "Did Brenham know we were here and do that just to scare us? If not, why this night work without lights?" said Frank. Chet grimaced. "Nuttiest thing I've ever seen." Exhausted, the two boys took shifts for the remainder of the night. When nothing more had transpired by sunrise, they drove north and rejoined Joe and Biff. They had had an uneventful night at Pembroke Road, but were excited by Frank and Chet's adventure and agreed that Brenham's actions were indeed suspicious. Frank asked, "Did you pick up anything on the radio?" "Nothing new," Biff said. He climbed into Chet's jalopy and they roared off. The brothers soon passed them on the motorcycles. The Hardys were just entering Bayport when report of a theft came over the police band. The car, reported missing at Lucas Street in Bridgewater, was later recovered, abandoned on the other side of town. Owner, while sitting in his parked car, was gassed. No clues. "In Bridgewater!" Joe exclaimed. "That's not only the first theft someplace besides Shore Road, but it's the first time the thieves have failed." Apparently, they were frightened off before they could get out of town. "So it was the car thieves who cast Scratch and us," said Frank. Another idea struck him. "Bridgewater's at the end of Pembroke Road, Joe. Also, remember that postmark on the phony typed note from Jack? Come on, let's check on Slagle at the Excelsior." The Hardys cycled to the Waterfront Hotel and Joe went in to inquire. When he emerged from the rundown doorway, his expression was not happy. "Slagle, or James Wright, checked out early this morning." The boys decided to sacrifice their treasure hunt for the day and check the hotels in Bridgewater for Slagle. First, they stopped at a diner and had a quick breakfast. Afterwards, they hurried to their motorcycles and started up. Just then, a middle-aged man strode over to them. "You're the Hardy boys, aren't you?" he demanded. They nodded. "My car was stolen a week ago," he shouted. "You and your father had the nerve giving bail money to car thieves and allowing them to escape. What are you going to do to help? If my car is not recovered, I'll hold you personally responsible." The man stormed away. Frank was depressed. "This feeling in town worries me, Joe. Not because of the ridicule or threats, but because so many people seem to convinced that the Dodds are guilty." As the Hardys coasted to the corner, Joe groaned. Approaching them with a broad smirk was the dumpy figure of would-be detective Oscar Smuff. "What ho! It's our two young sleuths," he sang out flatly. "Any sign of your Dodd friends, the car thieves?" Frank was too accustomed to Smuff's ways to be incensed. "We think the Dodds are innocent," he responded. "If you boys were smart," Smuff went on, "you'd memorize pictures of all the stolen cars like I do. I'm watching the streets." "For the Dodds, too?" Joe asked. Smuff nodded smugly. "Or accomplices. I think a woman is involved in the racket somewhere, and if my deductions are correct, she's got blonde hair." He whipped out a notepad and glanced at a scribbled list. Then the detective looked up at a sedan stopping for a red light. Suddenly his eyes widened. There's one of the stolen cars now. Frank recognized the blonde woman driver as Chief Colleague's wife and tried to restrain Smuff. But the self-appointed detective excitedly darted into the street and up to the sedan. Poking his head in the window, he started to accuse the woman loudly. She turned to face him indignantly. The next moment, Smuff stepped back, open mouthed and flaming with embarrassment as he realized his mistake. By this time, the light had changed and horns were blasting impatiently. Stuttering apologies, Smuff retreated rapidly, wiping his forehead. Mrs. Colleague drove off, and the deflated detective hastily returned to the sidewalk. He passed the grinning Hardys with a sheepish look and disappeared around the corner. Still chuckling, Frank and Joe rode off. They passed the Brenham farm and turned down Pembroke Road on the way to Bridgewater. Everything seems to narrow down to this road and now to Bridgewater, Frank remarked. And according to the map, some of Brenham's property touches Pembroke. As the boys passed an open field, they noticed a man ahead leaning comfortably on the fence. He held a walking stick in one hand. Slaggle! Joe exclaimed. It's time we had a word with him, Frank declared. The Hardys rolled to a stop, hopped off, and hurried toward Slaggle. He turned as if to walk away, but the boys confronted him. Mr. Wright, Frank began. The broad-nosed bald man wiped his sleeve across his face, drumming the cane on the fence. What of it? He drawled. We understand that you work for Mr. Dodd. That's when your name was Slaggle. The man's lips tightened. It's none of your business what I do. Maybe not, Frank said. We just thought you might be able to give us a clue where the Dodds might be. He noticed Slaggle's expression change to a supercilious smile. Afraid I can't help you there, said Slaggle, leaning back. Besides, why should I bother spending my time here with car thief bailers? Anyway, I'm doing work for Brenham now. Like stealing cars? Joe interjected. Slaggle's face flushed. He leaned down and swung the end of his cane. A long silver blade pointed at Joe's face. Beat it, Slaggle rasped viciously. You're trespassing on private property. More surprised than awed by the lethal sword, Joe looked at Frank. At his brother's signal, they walked back to their motorcycles. Slaggle was still glaring lividly at them as they rode off in the direction of Bridgewater. At least we shook him up a bit, Frank smiled. Even if we can't find out where he's staying, we know for sure he's in league with Brenham and not just for farm work. That sword cane didn't look very innocent. But good for puncturing tires, Joe added, remembering the flats reported on some cars near the stolen ones. In Bridgewater, the brothers stopped at a drugstore, had lunch, then purchased a town map, which also had a list of the hotels in the immediate area. There were fewer in number than those in Bayport. The Hardys checked all but two in an hour. At this point, they entered one of the east end of town. The desk clerk immediately recognized Slaggle's picture. Yes, he checked in today. Name of Wright. He just dropped off his things, then asked directions to the telegraph office. Frank and Joe headed for the office a block away. Inside, a woman behind a typewriter affirmed the fact that Slaggle had sent a message out, though she was not permitted to divulge its contents. As the boys walked away, Frank said, Joe, sometimes when people send a telegram, he makes a draft of it first. He saw a wastebasket beneath a writing counter and hurried over. It took him only a second to find a torn piece of yellow paper with Slaggle's name at the bottom. When he found the second half, the boys left the office excitedly. Outside, they pieced the halves together and read the message. More nerve now. Trying for 8-cylinder stock. Taking care of 2 friends. Attend to them when job done in a week or so. Expect you for shipment tomorrow. The message was addressed to Carlton Milliman in New York City. Carlton Milliman, C.M., Joe mused. Frank, he must be our mysterious visitor who wouldn't give his name. The 8-cylinder business, that cinches Slaggle's connection with the Shore Road gang. Frank nodded. It fits. I wonder how Milliman figures in. Two friends might refer to Mr. Dodd and Jack, which gives us only a week before we're going to have to work fast. If we only knew what this shipment is and where it's going, Joe murmured. The Hardys stopped at an outside phone booth. And Frank dialed home. Mrs. Hardy answered. I'm glad you called, she said. Your father phoned a little while ago and gave me a list of things for you boys to look up in his files. Information to help him on his case. He's going to call back tonight at 10 for your data. We're on our way, Frank assured her. When they reached home, the brothers washed and changed, then started work. Among the items their father had requested were the first dates of manufacture of various foreign weapons and ammunition, as well as serial numbers for certain guns made abroad. The job took most of the afternoon. The boys had almost finished when Frank exclaimed, Joe, remember the grenade? Those machine gun bullets were foreign make. Sure enough, you think they might have a connection with Dad's arms smuggling case? Possibly, since we're pretty sure they were used by the thieves. After supper, Frank and Joe handed Mrs. Hardy the data they had compiled and asked her to relay it to their father. We'll get back to our case now, Mother, Joe explained. Please give Dad our regards. The boys had decided to cycle along Pembroke Road. Seeing nothing suspicious, they returned to Shore Road. As they approached the intersection, the sun was setting. There was no traffic. Let's cruise south, Frank proposed. Right. The young sleuths turned onto Shore Road with Joe in the lead. Some distance along, they had reached a section of the road with a sheer drop to the left and a steep rocky formation to their right. When Joe happened to glance back out to sea, he gave a start, then beckoned Frank to turn around. When they were facing north, Joe pointed towards a high shadow rock cliff that dropped to the ocean. A spidery figure was moving slowly up the rock face. The boys rode forward to get a closer look. A turn in the road made them lose sight of the figure. When their view was unobstructed, the spidery form had vanished. They watched the rock cliff for a few minutes, but saw nothing in the twilight. I'll bet that's the spider Scratch told us about, Joe declared. He looked half human, half spider, Frank remarked. I'd sure like to know where he went. Well, let's go. It'll be dark soon. Frank turned around and went ahead, increasing speed, and snapped on his headlight. Presently, he noticed a slight glitter over the center of the highway. As the reflection grew nearer, alarm coursed through his body. Strung chest high across the entire highway was a fine steel wire net. It was too late to stop. Frank ducked and closed his eyes, yelling as loudly as he could at the same time, Joe, look out! And that's the end of chapter 10.